In their world of marble floors and dazzling chandeliers, they didn't see any women wearing borrowed dresses. The security guard ignored me as if I were invisible, but they were unaware that I wasn't there to blend in. Rather, I was there to make a difference, and by the end of the evening, none of them would ever forget my name. Stay with me to learn how one underappreciated woman changed everything in one night. My name is Maya Chun, and 3 months ago, I was just another engineer. With big dreams and an empty bank account, I had been working 16-hour days on my startup, a security software that could revolutionize how businesses protect their data, but having the best idea means nothing if no one will listen to you. My old college roommate Jessica sent me the invitation. She worked for Richard Sterling. The tech Billy Richard never stopped searching for the next great thing. I was standing outside a home that appeared to be from a movie, and although my clothing and shoes were borrowed, my confidence was entirely mine since I had spent weeks investigating every visitor, business, and possible opportunity. I was more knowledgeable about Richard Sterling's company than the majority of his staff. The security guy waved me through after hardly even looking at my invitation, which should have been my first indication of how the evening would go. The celebration was just what one could anticipate from a multi-billionaire. Ice sculpture sleeve musical performances, waiters delivering food platters that exceeded my rent each month, tech CEOs, venture investors, celebrities who put their fame in companies, and me were among the visitors who moved in circles I had only read about in business journals. When I tried to introduce myself to a group talking about artificial intelligence, they ignored me as if I were furniture, and when I tried to join a discussion on cybersecurity, which is my area of expertise, they glanced past me as if I were wearing an invisibility cloak. Excuse me, but one man really turned away from me in the middle of a sentence. I was listening to a woman who had been featured in Forbes last week when I replied, "Oh, are you at the catering company?" She interjected, "Could you get me another glass of wine?" I'm Maya Chun, and I manage a cybersecurity firm. My cheeks heated, but I spoke steadily. She seemed perplexed, as if the words didn't make sense, and then she left. For the first hour, I felt like a ghost haunting my own dreams. I witnessed deals being made, relationships being created, and opportunities being shared amongst individuals who all looked alike, came from the same circles, and attended the same schools. But the problem about being invisible is that they never spoke to me. Everything is heard by you. I found out which investors were dropping out of which ventures, that Richard's largest rival was going to release a product that would destroy his market share, about boardroom conflict that hadn't reached the press yet, and then I heard something that made my pulse race. Richard Sterling was chatting with his assistant, Elena Rodriguez, who I knew from the company website. She was the one who actually managed Sterling's business while he was playing the visionary, and the Carson deal was going apart. Sterling was standing close to the bar. "They're pulling their funding without their backing, so we can't launch the security platform next quarter." Richard was speaking in a tight voice under stress. "What do they want?" Elena asked. "They want proof that our system can handle advanced, persistent threats. They want something that our current security can't provide. We need a solution that can predict and prevent attacks before they happen, not just respond to them." My software did just that. I had spent 2 years creating algorithms that could detect attack patterns before they were fully developed, but how do you break up a billionaire's private conversation when you've been invisible all night? I watched and listened for the next 20 minutes as Richard became more agitated as the evening went on, and his smile became forced, and his laugh became too loud. This wasn't just about one deal, though. It was about the future of his company. In the meantime, I noticed that Elena was different from everyone else. She actually saw the people around her, thanked the waiters by name, and assisted an elderly gentleman in finding his coat. When I accidentally made eye contact with her, she didn't look through me. Instead, she looked at me, and that's when I decided to approach her during a quiet moment when Richard was drawn into another conversation. "Excuse me, Ms. Rodriguez," I said quietly. "My name is Maya Chun. I know this may sound weird, but I couldn't help but hear about the Carson deal." Elena's eyebrows went up, but she didn't brush me off, so I said, "You might be able to help." I explained that I've created a predictive security system that does exactly what Carson is requesting. It doesn't just stop attacks. It temporarily prevents them. Elena really looked at me and said, "You're not one of Richard's usual contacts." I replied, "Honestly, I'm the type of person who usually gets overlooked in rooms like this, but my software isn't." Elena turned to face Richard, who was now pacing close to the window with his phone pressed to his ear. "Can you prove it?" she asked, pulling out my phone and showing her a demonstration video of my software that caught a simulated attack that traditional security completely missed. Elena saw her expression grow more interested by the second. "This is impressive," she said. "But Richard's dealing with a room full of people tonight. Getting his attention won't be easy. Then I'll wait for the right moment." I replied, "I've been waiting for 2 years. I can wait a little longer." That moment arrived an hour later, and it wasn't what I had anticipated. Richard had been growing increasingly frustrated as the evening went on, with phone calls going poorly, and the Carson deal was when Richard said, "I'm going to break protocol here and ask for help." The audience turned to face him, halfway to the lips. The champagne glasses stopped. Many of you are aware that I have been developing a revolutionary security platform, but you might not be aware of the fact that I am currently facing a problem that I am unable to resolve with my available resources. I require a security solution that can anticipate cyber attacks before they occur, not only react to them, not only clean up after them, but actually prevent them. The room was bustling with quiet conversations as he looked around, asking if anyone here had any ideas, knowledge, or connections that could help. This isn't just about my company. It's about protecting every business in the digital age. I saw a few people approach Richard, but I hung back and waited until the initial rush subsided, until it was just Richard, Elena, and a few close advisors near the bar. At that point, I walked over and said calmly and clearly, "Mr. Sterling, I believe I have to observe the precise moment when Richard turned to face me. His mind attempted to locate May apologize. Have we met, Maya?" He probably saw me at his party all evening but didn't pay any attention to me. "We haven't met in person, but I've been yearning for this chat all evening, Chin," I replied, holding out my hand. "This is the woman, Richard." Elena moved closer. "I was telling you about the one with the predictive security system, and now that he was fully focused on me, tell me more." This was the moment I had prepared for my entire career. Traditional cybersecurity is similar to having a great ambulance service. I started providing fast response times and excellent emergency care, but people still get hurt. What if we could predict exactly when and where accidents would occur instead of waiting for them to happen? I took out my phone and launched my demonstration app. Not only does my program keep an eye out for recognized dangers, but it also learns how assaults evolve and recognizes the minor clues that appear before any real harm is done. I gave him the identical demonstration that I had shown Elena, but this time I described the underlying technology. How attack paths may be predicted by machine learning methods, how my system had a 94% prevention rate in beta testing, and how behavioral analysis could detect dangers before they materialized. Even the bartenders appeared captivated as Richard listened without interjecting, and the Carson Group withdrew their funding because they required proof of concept. I went on to say that I could offer that evidence that my system is currently prepared for enterprise deployment. "What sort of testing have you conducted?" Richard's eyes widened when one of his advisors requested 18 months of trials with midsize companies. My software stopped ransomware attacks, data breaches, and corporate espionage attempts, and in the few instances where attacks managed to get through, it detected them in seconds as opposed to the industry average of 287 days, which is how long it typically takes a company to discover they've been breached. I verified that my system would have detected those attacks before they began. The discussion that ensued was unlike anything I had ever encountered. Richard asked me technical questions, which I answered without hesitation, and his team presented me with problems that I had previously thought through and resolved for 20 minutes. After months of translating, I finally felt as though I was speaking my natural tongue. And then Richard delivered the words that forever altered my life. The room became silent as I felt Elena grin next to me as we talked about a collaboration. That would involve more than simply licensing your software. It would involve hiring you as the chief security officer for the whole Sterling enterprise. Richard's counselors were nodding in agreement, which I thought was kind, but I had a counterproposal. Richard arched an eyebrow and said, "I'm listening. Joint venture Sterling provides the resources and market access. I provide the technology and expertise, and we split ownership 50/50ths. I remain CEO of the security division." For a brief moment, no one said anything, which isn't how these discussions typically proceed, and no one made a counteroffer. Richard Sterling suddenly burst out laughing, saying, "You know what, Maya? I've been surrounded by yes-men all evening. It's refreshing to meet someone who knows their worth." He held out his hand, saying, "You have a deal." The remainder of the evening flew by as word spread that Richard Sterling had recently partnered with someone new. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to me. The same people who had previously scanned me were asking for my business card, contact details, and availability for coffee meetings. However, what really stood out to me was that I handled everything differently than I would have at the start of the evening. I wasn't vying for their attention anymore, and I wasn't attempting to prove that I belonged because I had already proven my value. Near the conclusion of the evening, Maya, the CEO, who had practically turned his back on me before, approached me when it counted. "I don't think we were properly introduced earlier. My name is Brandon Wells," and I smiled warmly. "You were too busy dismissing me to introduce us." Richard pulled me aside one last time, Maya, and I asked him, "How did you stay so calm tonight?" Most people would have been frustrated, angry, or given up. His face reddened. "I'm sorry about that, and I'd love to make it up to you." Maybe I said, "Have your people call my people." Elena had my information, and as I was leaving, I heard her laugh. "Maybe we could talk about some opportunities for collaboration." I've been underestimated my entire career because I discovered early on that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is listen, get ready, and wait for your moment. When that time comes, make sure you're prepared to take advantage of it. He nodded thoughtfully. As I made my way to my car, the same old Honda I had driven to the party in, I thought about how 3 hours earlier I had been invisible, and now I was Richard Sterling's business partner, with a company valuation that had just multiplied by 1,000. The true victory, however, wasn't the money or the recognition, but rather the knowledge that I had remained true to myself in a space meant to make me feel insignificant. 6 months later, our joint venture has stopped more than 200 cyber attacks across 50 companies. The Carson Group returned with 3 times their initial investment, and I've been asked to speak at conferences about the power of predictive security, but I still think about that night at Richard's party, when the woman felt invisible but refused to go away, about the power that comes from earning respect rather than demanding attention. If you're reading this and you've ever felt ignored, dismissed, or invisible in rooms where you know you belong, I want you to keep in mind that your worth isn't determined by who people notice you. Rather, it's determined by what you bring to the table. When your time comes, don't shrink or apologize for taking up space. Instead, step into your power with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you can do for the world. Don't let anybody persuade you differently. Your voice, your thoughts, your distinct viewpoint. If Maya's tale encouraged you to value your own inner power, please press the subscribe button and forward this video to a worthy recipient. Tell me about a moment when you used being ignored to your advantage in a comment. Your tale might inspire someone else to keep going. Keep in mind that the most potent revolutions don't always begin with the loudest voices. Sometimes they begin with the brightest minds who have been patiently waiting for their day to shine. The world is waiting to see what you can do, so never stop believing in your own quiet strength.